The first lighter flickered in the darkness. At exactly 11:47 p.m. on April 21st, 1973, inside the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco, something happened that was never supposed to be part of the show. Bruce Lee was sitting in the VIP section, third row from the stage, watching Carlos Santana perform. He had come as a guest, a friend of a friend, seeking a night of music away from the pressures of Hollywood and the endless promotion for Enter the Dragon. He had not come to be seen, but 15,000 people had other plans. When Carlos Santana stopped mid-song and pointed directly at Bruce Lee, everything changed. And when those 15,000 lighters rose into the darkness, creating a sea of fire that stretched from the stage to the farthest wall, Bruce Lee experienced something that no film premiere, no martial arts championship, no standing ovation had ever given him. The face of a man who had seen everything looked like the face of a child seeing magic for the first time. This is the story of that night. The concert that became a tribute. The musician who understood something no Hollywood executive ever had. And the moment when Bruce Lee discovered what it felt like to be celebrated by people who loved him for reasons he had never fully understood. This is the night the crowd became fire. San Francisco, April 1973. Carlos Santana was at the peak of his powers. His blend of Latin rock, blues, and jazz had conquered the world. Woodstock had made him a legend. Albums like Abraxas and Santana 3 had cemented his status as one of music's true innovators. The Winterland Ballroom show was a homecoming of sorts. San Francisco was Santana's city, his spiritual home, the place where his sound had been born and nurtured. The venue held 15,000 people, and every seat was filled. Bruce Lee's attendance was almost accidental. He was in San Francisco for meetings about distribution of Way of the Dragon in American markets. A business acquaintance mentioned that Carlos Santana was performing that night and that he could arrange VIP tickets. Bruce had said yes almost without thinking. He needed a break. The pressure of Enter the Dragon's post-production, the negotiations with Warner Brothers, the constant interviews and appearances, all of it was weighing on him. Music had always been his refuge. A place where he could simply exist, simply feel, without performing or proving anything. He arrived at Winterland at 9:30 p.m. with Linda. They found their seats in the VIP section, close enough to feel the bass in their chests, far enough to have some privacy. The concert began at 10 p.m. Santana's band was extraordinary that night. The percussion drove deep into the body. The guitar sang and screamed and whispered. The crowd moved as one organism, connected by rhythm, transported by sound. Bruce watched with genuine appreciation. He understood what Santana was doing instinctively. The fusion of cultures, the refusal to be categorized, the insistence on creating something new from the collision of traditions. It was exactly what Bruce was trying to do with martial arts, with cinema, with everything. Between songs, Bruce leaned over to Linda. He's doing with music what I'm trying to do with fighting. Breaking the boundaries. Making something that didn't exist before. Linda squeezed his hand. Maybe that's why you were supposed to be here tonight. Bruce smiled. Maybe. The concert continued. Song after song. The energy building. The crowd surging. The night taking on that particular quality that only happens when artist and audience achieve perfect communion. At 11:30 p.m., during a brief break between songs, something unexpected happened. Carlos Santana spoke into the microphone. I want to take a moment, he said, to acknowledge someone special in the audience tonight. The crowd murmured. Guest acknowledgments at concerts were common. Usually a fellow musician, a producer, someone from the industry. Carlos continued. This man has changed what people think is possible. Not in music, in movement, in cinema, in the way human beings can express themselves through their bodies. Bruce shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't want attention tonight. He wanted anonymity. Peace. Carlos scanned the crowd, searching for the VIP section. He has shown the world that Asian voices, Asian faces, Asian stories belong on the global stage. He has inspired millions of people who had never seen themselves represented to believe that they can be heroes too. The crowd was stirring now. Whispers spreading. People turning to look. Carlos found what he was looking for. His eyes locked onto Bruce Lee's face in the third row. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother in the struggle to break boundaries. My fellow believer in the power of art to transform the world. Bruce Lee. Subscribe and leave a comment. Because what happened next would stay with everyone in that ballroom forever. A spotlight swung from the stage and found Bruce Lee in the crowd. 15,000 faces turned toward him. For a moment, Bruce was frozen. This was not what he had expected, not what he had wanted. The anonymity he had sought was gone, replaced by the sudden glare of attention. But then he saw the crowd's faces. They weren't the faces of people observing a celebrity. They were the faces of people recognizing a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler, someone who had fought the same fights they had fought, who had refused the same limitations they had refused. And they were smiling. The applause began. Not the polite applause of a formal event. Not the obligatory applause of an awards ceremony. The genuine, thunderous, heartfelt applause of people who wanted to express something that words couldn't capture. Bruce stood slowly. He raised his hand in acknowledgement. The applause intensified. Carlos spoke again. Bruce, my friend, I've never met you personally, but I've watched your films. I've seen what you're doing, and I want you to know that you're not alone in this fight. The crowd cheered. You and I come from different worlds, different art forms, different cultures, but we're fighting the same battle. The battle to be seen. The battle to be heard. The battle to prove that boundaries are made to be broken. He raised his guitar. This next song is for you. For everyone who has ever been told they don't belong. For everyone who has refused to accept that verdict. He began to play. The song was Oi Como Virginia, a Latin classic that Santana had transformed into something entirely new. The rhythm was infectious, the melody irresistible, the energy building from the first note. And then something extraordinary happened. A single lighter appeared in the darkness, held high above someone's head. A tiny flame in a sea of 15,000 people. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 100. Within 30 seconds, the entire Winterland Ballroom was filled with fire. 15,000 lighters, held high, creating a constellation of flames that stretched from the stage to the farthest walls. Bruce Lee stood in the middle of this sea of fire, the spotlight still on him, surrounded by 15,000 points of light. And his face transformed. The composed celebrity was gone. The controlled martial artist was gone. The careful performer who always knew exactly how to present himself to the world was gone. In their place was something raw, vulnerable, human. Bruce Lee looked at those lights, those 15,000 people who had chosen to honor him in a way that no interview, no award, no box office record could match, and he began to cry. Not discreetly, not the carefully managed tears of a public figure. Real tears, uncontrolled, streaming down his face while 15,000 strangers held fire for him. Linda, standing beside him, had never seen him like this. In their years together, she had seen him frustrated, angry, determined, joyful. She had rarely seen him completely overcome. This was new. The song continued. Santana played with his eyes closed, channeling something that seemed to come from beyond the physical world. The band drove forward, relentless, perfect. The crowd moved and swayed and held their lighters high. And Bruce Lee wept. Not from sadness. From something he couldn't name. From the overwhelming experience of being seen, truly seen, by people who owed him nothing, who gained nothing from honoring him, who simply wanted to express their gratitude and their recognition. The song ended. The lights stayed up. Carlos Santana looked directly at Bruce Lee. Brother, he said, you don't need to hide. We see you. All of us. We see what you're fighting for. And we stand with you. The crowd roared. Bruce wiped his eyes. He didn't try to hide what had happened. He raised both hands in a gesture of gratitude, of surrender, of acceptance. The applause continued for nearly 2 minutes. Not dying down. Not fading. 15,000 people refusing to stop until Bruce Lee understood what he meant to them. Finally, Carlos spoke again. Now sit down and enjoy the rest of the show. He smiled. You've earned it. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The tension broke. The moment transformed from overwhelming intensity to warm celebration. Bruce sat. The spotlight moved away. The lighters went out. The concert resumed. But something had changed. Something that would never change back. Share and subscribe. Because what happened after the concert has never been told. The show ended at 12:45 a.m. Bruce and Linda stayed in their seats as the crowd filed out. He wasn't ready to face the chaos of departure. He needed time to process what had happened. A security guard approached. Mr. Lee, Mr. Santana would like to invite you backstage. Bruce looked at Linda. She nodded. They followed the guard through the maze of corridors behind the stage. The atmosphere was electric, crew members high on the energy of a successful show, musicians coming down from the transcendent space that live performance creates. They found Carlos Santana in a small dressing room. He was alone, sitting quietly with his guitar across his lap, still vibrating with the residual energy of performance. He looked up when Bruce entered. "Brother." He stood. They embraced. Two men who had never met before, connected by something deeper than personal history. "I didn't expect that," Bruce said. His voice was still thick from the emotions of the evening. Carlos smiled. "Neither did I, honestly. I knew you were in the audience. A friend told me. But what happened with the lights, with the crowd, that was them. That was 15,000 people deciding to honor you on their own." Bruce shook his head. "I don't know what to do with that. How to understand it." Carlos gestured for Bruce to sit. They settled into chairs facing each other. Linda sat nearby, watching. "Let me tell you something," Carlos said. "When I was young, in Mexico, I was nothing. Poor. Invisible. Told that I would never amount to anything because of where I came from, what I looked like, how I spoke." Bruce nodded. He knew this story. It was his story too. "I came to San Francisco with a dream and a guitar. That's all. No connections. No money. No reason for anyone to believe in me." He touched the guitar beside him. "But I refused to disappear. I played on street corners. In small clubs. For anyone who would listen. I mixed Mexican music with American rock with African rhythms. People told me it would never work. Too confused. Too different. Too strange." He looked at Bruce. "Sound familiar?" Bruce almost laughed. "Exactly familiar. What I learned," Carlos continued, "is that there are people out there who need what we make. Not everyone. Not the majority. But enough. Enough people who feel like strangers in their own world, who are hungry for something that speaks to their experience, their struggle, their dream of being seen." He gestured toward the stage, toward the ballroom beyond. "Those 15,000 people tonight. They weren't just honoring you. They were recognizing themselves in you, seeing their own fight reflected in yours. When they held up those lighters, they were saying, 'I know what you've been through. I know what it costs. And I'm with you.'" Bruce was silent for a moment. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself," he said slowly. "Fighting for recognition. Demanding that the world take me seriously. And sometimes it feels like a battle that will never end." He looked at Carlos. "But tonight, for a few minutes, I felt something different. Not the satisfaction of winning. Something else. The feeling of being understood. Of being seen without having to fight for it." Carlos nodded. "That's the gift. The real gift. Not the fame. Not the money. Not the awards. The moment when strangers become brothers because they recognize the same fire burning in each other." He leaned forward. "You and I, we come from different places. Different arts. Different struggles. But we're fighting the same fight. The fight to prove that boundaries are illusions. That categories are prisons. That human beings can transcend anything if they refuse to accept limitations." He extended his hand. "Brother, welcome to the fight. You're not alone." Bruce took his hand. Held it. "Neither are you." They sat together for another hour. Talking about art. About struggle. About the strange burden of being pioneers in their respective fields. About families. About the future. When Bruce finally left Winterland at 2:30 a.m., something had shifted in him. Something fundamental. In the car, driving through the empty San Francisco streets, Linda asked him what he was thinking. Bruce was quiet for a long moment. "I've always seen myself as a fighter," he said finally. "Fighting Hollywood. Fighting prejudice. Fighting for recognition. Fighting to prove that I matter." He paused. "Tonight, I felt something different. I felt like part of a family. Not fighting against the world. Fighting with others who understand. Who see the same things I see. Who refuse the same lies I refuse." He looked at Linda. "Carlos Santana doesn't know martial arts. He's never made a film. He comes from a completely different world. But he understood me better in one conversation than people who have worked with me for years." Linda nodded. "Because you're both trying to do the same thing. Break boundaries. Make something new. Prove that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go." Bruce smiled slightly. 15,000 people held up fire for me tonight. Not because I'm famous. Not because of my films. Because they recognize something. Something true." He touched his chest. "I've been so focused on fighting that I forgot to notice who was fighting with me. Tonight, I saw them. All of them. And I will never forget it." 3 months later, Bruce Lee was dead. July 20th, 1973. Hong Kong. He was 32 years old. Enter the Dragon was released 6 days after his death. It became a global phenomenon. It changed cinema forever. It proved everything Bruce Lee had believed about his own potential. But he never saw it. Carlos Santana heard the news while on tour in Europe. He stopped his concert that night and played a tribute. An instrumental piece that he had never played before and would never play again. He told the audience about the night in San Francisco, about the lighters, about the conversation backstage, about two brothers from different worlds who had recognized each other. The crowd held up their lighters again, this time for a man who was no longer there to see them. But maybe he saw them anyway. Maybe somewhere, beyond the boundaries that separate the living from the dead, Bruce Lee looked down at that sea of fire and smiled. Maybe he finally understood what he had meant to the world. Maybe he finally felt seen. April 21st, 1973. Winterland Ballroom, San Francisco. 15,000 lighters. One spotlight. Two brothers. A sea of fire for a man who had burned so bright that the world couldn't look away. The lights went out at 12:45 a.m. The fire never did. This story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life themes.